It wasn't poor chairing skills not starting on time, we're just waiting for technology to catch up. So, welcome everybody, and I'd like to declare this Finance, Audit and Risk Committee meeting open and call for apologies.
We have apologies from Councillors Tukapua and Ketu.
Can I have a mover for those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Sand. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Victoria. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye is carried. Public participation.
Requested to speak to 7.1 Infrastructure Development Activity Update, Charles Wright, and Regional Councillor Sam Ferguson, and to 7.3 8 months report, Pavilion Bold.
Mr. Judd, if you'd like to come to the right, sorry, my apologies. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, operations, and members of the public. Kia ora. The two areas of contention that I'm going to speak about is in relation to accountability, credibility, integrity, and transparency regarding a duty of care and fiducial points of funding being spent without taking into account on page 932, Crown Infrastructure Partners enabling infrastructure for Tairaka. And then what I'm saying is it's bulldozing ahead without having yet heard submissions to the proposed plan change for Tairaka growth area. Also, there's no guarantee to obtain a proposed resource consent to the Queen Street drainage stormwater system. So money is being spent without taking into account those things. On page 14, 3.5, Northeast Living Upgrade Project. No guarantees to obtain a proposed resource consent attached to the Copperall drainage scheme. The above said is the cart before the horse material, without assumptions being made, without producing all the facts and evidences. Thank you, Kia ora. Now, there's one question I'd like to ask. I can't sort of understand and comprehend in this committee why you have two, if I'm corrected or not, two financial reporters in here, reporting people, financials. You do have two, don't you?
We do currently. My name's Jacinta Straker, so I started at the end of January. The reason why there are currently two is that Doug Law, who's been here for approximately about 13 years, is in the process of retiring. And so there's a period of handover where he's reducing his hours to finish up at the end of June.
Oh, so thank you. So that's succession planning. Thank you. Much appreciated. Any questions? Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Sam from the Regional Council.
Kia ora, everyone. Sam Ferguson from Regional Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to take a minute. I picked up the agenda this afternoon, and it was all very last minute. But I just wanted to raise a small concern in my mind with you all around. So this is on page 14, and just around the Northeast project, because there is a consent application for Kopatoa. I was at a drainage meeting on Monday with the community. So there's quite a bit of angst in this area, and I'm struggling to communicate to the community how on one hand this work is underway, on the other there's a consent process that's now going to hearing, and so I thought just it was worthwhile just raising that as a concern from my perspective. I don't have the answer, but you may all not see it as a concern, and that's up to you. But yeah, just from me, it's not. It doesn't feel like the dots are connecting up right at the moment.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to actually meet with Councillor Ferguson and actually go through and answer those questions. There's a complexity around it. There's also an RMA process that we're going through at the moment, and I would be happy to actually sit down with the councillor to actually go through that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Any further questions?
That might be an easy way to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Sam. And our last public participation is from Pavilion Bold, and I understand you're talking on the 8-month financial report, page 44. Thank you.
Afternoon all. There's quite a few things on page 44. I'm sorry if I just dive into things as usual, but there we go, that's me. My biggest concern, as you know, is always the landfill. The consultancy fees of 93 grand for, I presume, Morrison Solutions consultants. They told the neighbourhood liaison group that there wouldn't be any reports. Charles asked them, would you have a report from what you're doing? No, we're just a process system to keep the dump open, is basically what we heard. Solid waste report this month, unfortunately, has had 24 exceedances of consent conditions, so more poisons pumped back to the wastewater station. This one has jumped up from 16 3 months ago, and before that we were on 8, so as I keep saying to you, the cycle seems to be compounding itself. What about, and I read something about another piece of land going up for building consent, and they were worrying about the lagoon. What about our Hokio food? We get whitebait down our stream. What's all this poison doing to them? You know, I don't think anybody actually considers our stream as a lifestyle or life source. Council paid low consultants and then Tolkien Taylor. They didn't like their report, and now we've got the Morrison solution. Just seems like a friend paid for a sinking ship. And they don't care about our environment. Under the consumer law, if it doesn't work, it shouldn't be there. This payment for HECA and MPNG in the neighbourhood liaison group hasn't even heard about this yet. Note 10, Bailey's. When Bailey's put up these properties, they put 3 properties up for sale, 6 hectares in 2 Rose Street properties, which we seem to have got 813,000 written off as a gift to the trust. But what happened to 72 Cambridge Street South? I put in for this. Here's all the documentation Bailey sent me. And for some reason, I think it must have gone to a Horowhenua Development Limited. But you seem to fail to put this into the price. It had an acre of native trees on it, fenced off, while everybody was on their Christmas break just after the New Year. Forest chopped down and a road bulldozed in. I wasn't worried about the Waitiri blocks and the Manukau block heading down to Waikawa Beach. There seems to be a big blocks of Maori land without all the owners' approval for selling it. And in the December agenda, Foxton Beach section seemed to get sold for $7,000, which I put why? If if they've been sold to the young folk, okay, but why the old developers like Taurika? Taurika is a smoke screen as far as I can see to what else is being planned in Horowhenua. Note 5 and 11, both the same church, huge variance from 2,964 million. Note 4, that's just a colour code one, it should be in green, Karen. Hinemoa Developments and the Samoan Church all seem to have mostly from Wellington workers, not our guys. Horowhenua Alliance, this is a good one. Mr. Bishop, you commented that this was the best thing when you needed them at short notice. Their charges are over the top. He said to the last auditor, council had this. Oh, sorry, Sue. That's what you said at the last when the last auditor went through that you needed the Horowhenua Alliance. Well, apparently they seem to have found themselves a new home in by the old Co-op Bank on the corner of Bath and Oxford Street. What's wrong with operations? When David Clapperton has his fund moved up to from 200,000 to $1 million without any questions being asked, the red lights go on. This is not transparency. Mr. Mayor Fayan got a hard time for having 50,000 and what he spent on his needy things. Getting facts out of operations is very hard. One has to know what you need before you get them. I have been working for ages to try and get the water sample breakdown for the tests that have been going around Queen Street East, Dominion Drain and all of that. And I've been through the, what do you call it, when you send, ask for information, official information, I got nothing until I got these things from Horizons. And now I've actually got how much E. coli is coming down those drains. And the worst thing is all of them actually had CC David Clapperton on the bottom of them.
Can I just say that you actually had 6 minutes and
Yes,
normal time is 5?
I knew that I'd probably go over my 5 minutes. So anyway, I did find though that workshop we had on the 17th of February was very good with Rob Bates helping us, and he insisted that all development and financial contributions would go back on the books. And thank you very much. I know I don't spoken too much. Sorry. Any questions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. There's been a number of comments and statements made that I think require further clarification. And with the leave of the Chair, I've asked that Ms. Bold leave her questions with us so we can actually formulate a complete response to that, rather than spending time and going through line by line
So you
the
want
comments that have been made. Yep, absolutely, please. And I'll undertake to actually get a response back to all of those questions that's been raised.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Will you copy elected members in that response? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Wayne.
Thank you. Just given that we're in public and there's a camera and some sound going out to the wider public, there's just one point that I do want to see to comment on it, is that the comment made about the landfill and Morrison's input into just wanting to keep it open. I think, can we just put it on the record?
So through you, Chair, that's one of the comments that I would refute. Morrison and I are not here to actually keep the landfill open. They're here to actually work with the council around a process of service delivery, and that will actually land not in the not too distant future. But I would refute that comment that was made by Mrs. Bold.
Thank you. Does that satisfy you, Councillor Wayne? All right. No further comments, questions. I understand there are no late items. There are declarations of conflict of any interest for items on the agenda that we need to make a decision on? Don't believe there are. Confirmation of the minutes held 24th of February. Can I have a mover for those adoptions? Thank you, Councillor David. Seconded. Mr. Jackson, thank you. I was going to say, Member Brian, thank you. Any discussion on those? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, those against carried. Announcements. I am not aware of any announcements. Reports. Page 7, item 7.1, infrastructure development activity update.
Afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and
Good afternoon.
members of the committee. Bit of a ditto month for us over the last sort of 4 weeks or so. Works have been proceeding very well in our respective projects, and not a huge amount of update this month, other than good progress is being made. So happy to take the report as read, and happy to take questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thanks, Brent. So, looking at the North East Levin project, which we've had 2 speakers on so far, okay, wondering what is the risk to us of that second project to portion 2, the resource consent is not forthcoming?
Just to make it clear, the 2 projects are independent from one another. The works we're currently doing is a renewals project for sewer, stormwater and a road widening and upgrade. We currently deposit stormwater through our attenuation pond system through that piece of land on the corner of Fairfield and Roslyn. The consent is to improve that situation, not to build anything new, it's to make it better. So the work we're currently doing for Roslyn Road at this stage is designed to carry on depositing stormwater into the current system, so that there is no risk for the renewal at this stage. If we get a consent, we will improve the situation.
Just further to that, so really the reason that we want the consent is so that we can put more stormwater into the Cockatoo catchment, correct?
The reason we're doing it is so we can control the quality of the water going in, and we can throttle it and control its pace and its release. But from a catchment perspective, the catchment that is collecting stormwater is the same size as it is now. The reason we're doing it is so we can handle the peak flows that come off the houses that are being built in that area. And that's why we've enlarged the pipes, and the pipes themselves are an enormous underground storage facility that will act as a pond and will throttle that water back so no more water gets released into the stream as is today.
Okay, so I understand that. So with the development in the northeast, and there will be more runoff because there is more hard surface, right? And we've got people downstream really concerned that it's going to affect them, you know, right down there. This possible hearing coming up. So I understand you're saying at the moment we've got a throttle on the pipe going down, so we're limited to how much water we can actually put into that Cockatoo drainage system. So are we going to need that capacity to be greater in the future than we can cope with now?
I think we're confusing 2 aspects here. There's the Cockatoo Drainage Management Scheme, which is run by Horizons, and then there's the Stormwater Management System that's run by Council. I'm only dealing with the stormwater system that's run by Council, so I can't talk on behalf of my colleagues at Horizons on how they're going to manage the Cockatoo. But the other aspect I want to raise is that there is an RMA process we're following through, and we present evidence in a little over a month's time, and we'll go through a hearing process on that. Council has submitted the fact that our application effects are less than minor, which suggests that the additional load into the Kopatora stream are less than minor. That is the position that we've taken in a pre-hearing position, and that's the evidence that we'll be presenting going forward. We're in the hands of the RMA process thereafter.
Okay, understand that, thank you. So, I was at the Drainage Board meeting that Councillor Ferguson was at the other day, and there is a considerable amount of angst. And I guess it's not really a question, but from my point of view, it would be really good if it didn't get to the hearing stage, and I would hope that that would be possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor David.
Yes, so look, I moved to page 11, the Foxton Beach Wharf, and just really need an assurance, Brent, that funding sources will come together for that project.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Yes, funding sources are in place. Just to confirm the resolution that 50% of the funds will be provided by the freeholding account, and the balance will be paid for by council, as well as I'm investigating one or two other third-party opportunities that are still in commercial terms, and I can't convey those just as yet. We're doing our best to spread the burden across a number of revenue sources.
Thank you, and that's the comfort we need on that issue. So look, I have a comment to make about the river loop regeneration, if that's appropriate. Look, just to recognise, as the report says, the great work that's been done to date, and the next steps, in fact the final steps that are going to be made with this project around beautification in the park area and the link up to Parito. The elephant in the room is this, and I just want to flag it tonight. It's not about trying to start a discussion tonight or a debate tonight, but the weeds are already regenerating at a rapid rate. There's photographic and video evidence that that is the case, and to create this wonderful asset and not turn our minds to how it is maintained would be inappropriate. So, and this is not saying it's the role of this council necessarily, it is simply flagging that we've created an asset which we need to maintain, and we need to at some stage have a discussion about how that happens. There's questions around ownership, responsibility, Department of Conservation, horizons, etc. But I do need to put that on the table, and I haven't flagged the issue to Brent or to anyone else, but I do need to say that we must not let go of the asset that we've created.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Any further questions? I've actually, you're not getting off that lightly, I've got a couple for you. And on page 9, we're saying is there's council's contribution for roading for the Foxton River Loop. Is there any chance of getting subsidy for the roading work from our very, very good friends NZTA?
That is from the subsidised budget. Yes. They're all smiling. They're all smiling because they all know. They're all smiling because you're probably the only one in the room without the answer. So the land is currently under Department of Conservation's ownership. We have been working with them for quite some time. So the work will be carried out under a licence to occupy as a maintenance activity to repair what is a very important public amenity. Any ongoing conversation around the ownership thereafter is a subsequent conversation after the repairs have been completed.
Sounds like I put my both feet in it. Yeah. All right. Any further on that note? Any further quick questions, comments on the report? Therefore, can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 7? Thank you, Councillor David. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Joe. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Next item is our infrastructure operations update, item 7.2 on page 17. I think we can take the report as read. You got any updates or highlights?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yes, I have two updates. So the Podes Road Bridge project is progressing well. So in the photo that's in there, it's halfway across the river. We're now fully across the river, and the roading portion is now being built up to it. So that progress is going very well. The other update that I'd like to just bring up on pages 25, 26 is reference to a digester at the Levin wastewater treatment plant. So basically the digesters process the heavier components of the wastewater, remove the sludge. We've had cracks and gas leakage in them, so there's been some repair work that's been undergoing. But since the writing of this report, digester 1 the blower has failed, and basically that digester has stopped working altogether. And as part of that, the anaerobic biological process in there has stopped working. So we have to empty that. It takes around 3 months for that to cool enough to vent the gas and empty it. And then we have to get rid of the sludge that's currently in there alongside the normal sludge that we're producing through digester 2. So we are running on one digester at the moment. The parts for the blower, it's around a 20-week lead time for parts. And the tank itself, once we empty it, we'll have to assess the condition of that. So potentially we will need to, if it's not repairable, put in a new one. But we won't know that for a couple of months or so. We have got consultants looking at what the options are and looking at what the cost of a new digester will be, so that once it is emptied and we can ascertain what the repair costs will be, we can weigh up whether we go for a new one to cater for growth or repair the old one. So not great news, but unfortunately that's where we're at. Once we know a bit more, we'll do a report and bring to council with an update and options and things like that. But at this stage, it's about all the information that we've got until we empty it and see what's wrong. So.
Kevin, understanding that, can you tell us how old these digesters are, and are they failing before you would expect them to?
I think I'm not 100% sure of the age. I'm just starting to there's a report being written for me at the moment with some of that detail. So once I get that information, I'll be forwarding it on.
Any other questions? Christine?
Thanks, Kevin. I just wanted to talk about the new storage pond at the Foxton wastewater treatment plant. Okay, and you're going ahead with that by basically putting some other projects on the back burner or pushing them out. And I'm just wondering what those projects are and what risks there are at pushing those projects out at the expense of doing this project.
Yeah, there's a few projects that we've been able to defer for one reason or another. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One is the new pipeline going into the wastewater treatment plant to replace the one that's got cracks in it. That needs a peer review, and we've had trouble getting the right people to peer review it. We've now secured someone, but by the time that gets done, we're into winter, and the wastewater flows are higher, and trying to switch over and trying to build it in the winter is not ideal. So we're pushing that into spring to do it then, so we can bring that into the new financial year. Another one that we've pushed out is the wastewater renewal in Cambridge Street. So we're just putting that to the top of the list for next year. So we've developed a forward works plan that has 3 to 4 years worth of renewals on it, and it's a prioritised list. So there's a matrix looking at risk and all the different sorts of things that we're using to decide which one has the highest priority. And basically we will shuffle projects around to fit in the highest priority project. So that it just means we just reshuffle that.
So there's no major risk then? Because I was just thinking, okay, we've shuffled things around so we can do this project, bring it forward, and while the equipment and the people are there, and that seems sensible to me. And I see we're also sort of at the top of our Capex for the year. Looks like we're going to hit our Capex for the year. As a council, we could make a decision to maybe spend more than what we'd planned to on Capex in a given year, but in your opinion, you think that's not necessary?
Jacinta will probably know more about the flow-on effects of going over that Capex budget into the years coming up. We will just shuffle our budgets and make it fit.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess in terms of the conversations around the long-term plan, effectively if we do spend a little bit more this year, in terms of the borrowings limits that you've set to go out to the community and conversations around changes to that or leaving them where they are, effectively it would mean we'd need to manage that overall net program over the next 3 to 4 years to make sure if we spent a bit more this year that we need to spend a bit less in the coming years to account for that.
Okay. Any other questions? I've got one you may not be able to answer, but thank you for the heads up on the digester and probably that not so good news. What are the risks for council in only running one digester in terms of level of service, compliance issues, and what happens if the second one was to pack a sand? Now, maybe I shouldn't have said that, maybe I should have just thought about it.
So part of the report that's coming is looking at those. We've got 2 different consultants working on this issue at the moment. Some of the sludge, it's processing the sludge is a bit of an issue, so we may need to empty the first digester into sludge bags to dry rather than going through our sludge press, or put in a second sludge press to cater for that. The one digester should be able to keep up. The problem would be if something happened to it we wouldn't be able to take the sludge out, so we'd need to just maybe reconfigure the plant a bit so that it acted more in a traditional manner for oxidation pond rather than the pond that is now, because the sludge would be entering the pond basically. So we're just we'll get that report done and see what the implications are from that.
Thank you. Right, any further questions, comments on that report? Okay, in that case, can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 17? Councillor Ross, seconded. Councillor Victoria, any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Thank you very much. Our next item is our 8-month report to the 28th of February 2001. Thank you and welcome to your first official meeting as CFO.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, I guess what I'll do is take the report as read, but in terms of an update from last month when we discussed the report, you'll notice that there is a significant amount of work being done around the forecasting, and that's particularly in the capital area, and hopefully that level of information in terms of what we've spent and what we're planning to spend for the rest of the year will give you the information that you need in terms of what projects we're doing or not doing compared to what's being planned. So if there's any feedback around changes that you'd like to make in that space, please say so. Also, another point that I'll highlight before we go to any questions is the fact that at the moment, based on that forecast, we are planning to spend 28.8 million of the 30.6 million that's been budgeted. And if we actually take into account that there's about 2.5 million of work that was budgeted as capital that's now being spent as operational money, and that's to do with the work that was done on the river as part of the Manawatu River Loop project, then effectively we are at this stage planning to fully spend the capital program, which is good news in terms of getting work done. What we will need to do as we continue into the next months, and particularly with the next report being the quarterly report, there's been a lot of work done across the business to look at projects and what the best estimate is to give you in terms of what's going to be done this year, but you will see further refinement coming in the following month. But at this stage, there's been a good amount of work gone in to give the best estimate we can of what work will get done before the end of the year.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Sam.
Jacinda, just a question on the Capex forecast. So we've talked before about, around the council table, around how obviously projects have a contingency within their total project budget. And so, yeah, so it's this, if we're intending to hit spend, it tends to mean that for a number of projects we would have been using that contingency, right? So in terms of the reporting that's going to come to us, is there some way that we can get a feel for, yeah, I guess what projects because there's spend and then there's what actually projects are actually being delivered. And we're not always going to deliver 100% of projects, but is there some way that we can get some information around what projects haven't been done, so that we can therefore also gauge in terms of the projects that have been done, you know, have we been spending right up to essentially up to the budget of those projects, and using that contingency, or have we still been sort of coming under budget on projects? Does that make sense?
That's three, Mr. Chair. I'd say probably in terms of the project reports that you see coming through, Kevin and Brent and some of the others, you should see for those significant projects a conversation about those particular budgets and whether we've met them in terms of what we've planned. For those, they should go into, there will be more detail around whether we're on track or not, which would link to whether we've spent our contingency budget or not, because they will have specific amounts built in for contingency. In regards to, I guess, the rest of the budget, we definitely won't be spending exactly where we've planned to spend in all cases, and that's due to, I guess, conversations about reprioritization, because certain projects might be tracking behind, as Kevin mentioned, so it's important so we get work done, put other ones in their place that are also in the list of projects that the council wants to get done. So hopefully through these graphs and some more detail underneath them to try and get across which projects they are and why they've either been spent in advance of when they've been planned or not spent when they were originally planned. Hopefully that should give you enough detail to inform what you need.
Yes, my question is on page 34, and it is about the LGFA 10 million. Just wondered if you could explain the rationale behind that, please.
Sure, so it's really around making sure that the council has good and ready access to funding. So the LGFA, they have the most reasonable level of access to credit facilities. We looked at different banks. Jeff's gone and done some work for me around does it make sense to do it through BNZ? Does it make sense to do it through the LGFA? What we effectively do is give ourselves the ability to borrow an additional 10 million at any point if we need it, but we don't intend to actually need to borrow that money. It's there as a backstop from a risk management perspective, so that we make sure we've always got ready access to funds without anything needed, or lots of paperwork or work with lawyers. It just gives us that access to it quickly if it's needed.
Can I just add my 2 pennies worth that people probably may or may not remember, in 2008 there was a bit of a liquidity squeeze, and I know of one council, who will remain nameless, tried to borrow money in 2008 and they didn't have such a facility. The current facility rate was about 7%. That council paid 11%. So they paid 4% or 40 basis points over what everyone else was paying because there was no facility. So the intention is never to use it, but you always got to have that security in your hip pocket in case things quickly turn, and it's really difficult to put a facility in place once things start tightening up, because sometimes it can happen overnight. And that certainly started to happen 12 months ago if the government actually hadn't intervened and started buying treasury bonds.
One quick other, I guess in terms of Standard & Poor's and our credit rating, that's a conversation that definitely improves our outlook in terms of the rating agencies, as they know that we're planning in advance in case there's anything that comes up. So from a liquidity perspective, that's seen favourably from a rating agency perspective.
And can I just ask, what's the indicative cost? Put Jeff on the spot now. 0.17% per annum. Sorry? Can we get some? Well, yeah, but you don't, yeah, that's just that's what you pay to have it sitting there. Then you've got to pay the interest rate on top of it. Yeah.
Chairman, I do know how we could make some money out of that.
I think we've been down that track. Yeah. I think that's almost about as bad as my wolf comment. Right. Any further questions of Jacinta? Good report. Obviously, not many questions. So can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 29? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Seconded, Councillor Todd. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Our last item on the public agenda is our committee actions. I don't think it needs any discussions or explanations. The only comment that I would make, and probably to Nikki / Jacinta, not Doug, is have we had any update from our good friends Audit New Zealand?
Thank you. I did actually follow up with our auditors this week around that. And it is due back. It's sitting with our Stephen Lucy, our audit director at the moment, but it hasn't come back to us yet. But I did do a bit of a chase up with them on that this week.
So we can expect it. So we can expect that on next month's report, next month's agenda.
I would hope so.
Do I need to put some pressure on?
Oh, we will.
You will. All right. I'll leave it to you. Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Sam?
Just a point of clarification under 21/41, we've got the information on the sale of Road Street property, originally in committee item. I understood that there was an action around the reporting on, for a slightly broader report on properties purchased and disposed of within a certain period, and I can't recall what the period was that we actually discussed, but am I right on that, or have I missed the boat?
I turn myself off. No, you're right, and I've had a discussion with the CFO, and we'll have that for a subsequent report, so that's why it's actually still not complete. I think it's actually worthy of comment, and just going back through a bit of history of the sale and purchases through the period. All right, any further questions? We can then go to page 47 just to receive this report. Can we have a mover, please? I'll move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wayne, you can move. I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Now we need to move into public excluded. Can I have a mover to move into public excluded? Thank you, Councillor David. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Christine. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, carried. Take 2 minutes just to turn the video off. Thank you very much, members of the public and members of the media, for your interest in this meeting. Thank you.